And it says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, a taunting proverb against him, saying, woe, say woe to him that increaseth, and we just went into that word increaseth, that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth. Okay, we're going to that word ladeth. It's kabad. And it says to be heavy, be weighty, weighty, be grievous, be hard, be rich, be honorable, be glorious. And you heard what they just said right here in the Kaiser report.
Influence around the world is brought about by indebting countries around the world and then forcing them to pay interest on that debt, backed up by the Pentagon. So it's not an empire of land and material as we've seen in the past empires like the Roman Empire, but it's a debt of financial engineering. But that financial engineering doesn't require soldiers. It doesn't require weaponry so much as it requires cheap interest rates.
See, through the interest rates, they've been borrowing, and then now they've accumulated so much debt, man. Okay? And it says to be rich, be honorable, be glorious, be burdensome. See, burdensome. And you see what he just said, that they're putting debt on people, man. That's a form of that interest rates, because once you borrow at that low interest rate, if it was high interest rates, they wouldn't be borrowing as much. But through those interest rates, they throw you deeper and deeper into debt, even themselves. Right now, there's no growth in Babylon, which we call what is America today, or the Roman Empire. There's no growth. We don't produce anything. Just like back in the days, around the time of the Great Depression, you had the automotive industry, you had different things, you had metallurgy. All them companies have went overseas, man. That's how they've bamboozled and got the other nations into the Ponzi scheme. But at one time, it was just Americans that was into that. So now, through those interest rates, they're killing the growth, man. Because now you just have to pay back your interest and you don't have no money coming into your pocket. And it says to be heavy, be insensible, be dull, to be honored, to be made heavy. Okay, that's the word laden. And it also goes back to the word laid. It says to fill or load, weigh down. Not ladeth, but laid. If you look at the word laid and you look that up, it means to fill or load, weigh down, burden. So if we read it how it says, who burdeth himself, or weighed down himself, or load himself with what? That, and we're gonna get it. Don't let me jump the gun. So let's read it from the top again. It says, shall not all these take up a parable against him, a taunting proverb against him, saying, and then what do you have now? You have Russia, and that's RT. Russia's laughing at America, man. I just seen a report where Putin was just laughing, man. Laughing at this place and saying and talking about their democracy, and it's pretty much just a army war game. Because what did they do in the Ukraine? They gave Ukraine money that they're gonna pay back by the way of the IMF. So they're putting that on people, man. If they come into your region, they put that debt on you. It says, taunting proverb against him, saying, woe to him that increases that which is not his, how long? And to him that ladeth, so make heavy, weigh down himself with thick clay. So let's look up that word clay. The word is abatyat. Okay, abatyat. And it says, way of pledge, heavy debts. Heavy debts. So it shows you, look, they're putting heavy debts. And let's look at the root word. It's abat. It says to take pledge, give pledge for a debt. To take a pledge, give a pledge for a debt. to interchange, to cause to give a pledge. And you heard what the Kaiser report just said. I mean, that it's well known into the banking industry. Okay, so now we're going to go back in here and play this. So we know now that this Habakkuk 2 and 6 is talking about their debt, man. It's talking about the debt that they've increased and put on other people. That's going to be part of the reasons why these other nations are going to shoot thermonuclear weapons on this place, man. Okay, because now when that money collapses and that money goes to nothing, that's showing that's putting those thoughts in these other nations' heads, man. That is corrupt. If this is if they can openly talk about this place being the Roman Empire and the fall of Rome and the debt and the unlawful use of that debt, that's showing that they're turning against this place, man. Okay, so let's play this.
By the architects of the American Empire, the Federal Reserve Bank and its current capo de capo, Janet Yellen. But at some point, you have diminishing returns. You cannot even service debt that's rolling over at 0.00001%. Yeah. Just like the Roman Empire, once it achieved a certain critical mass, it was impossible to keep the barbarians away. And this is where the American Empire is currently at. We've reached peak debt or credit.
It's like those good emperors didn't need Praetorian guards because the goodwill of the people was on their side. The same thing with this debt is the goodwill of the debtors is no longer on their side.
Well, at the same time, the denarius, I think it was called, the coinage of the Roman Empire, they went through something famously called coin clipping.
Yeah.
Where the coins were clipped. Now, how is that different than negative interest rates?
So they were relying on the goodwill of the people, and here we have debt that has relied on the goodwill of the debtors who have been willingly paying over and over, but now they have to go to negative interest rates, i.e. steal from somebody in order to pay those. You're having to see more and more violence in the market. You're seeing more and more violent sort of agreements like TTIP and TPP, and that's what I was trying to say is related to the last of the good emperors. It's the consent of the people. There is no more consent in the market to pay off those bad debts. And then so going back to this article about eating the earnings of these good companies, the few good companies still rated good in the U.S. And they say that high-grade borrowers can always borrow as long as they remain high-grade. And for years, they were on the gravy train riding toward ever lower interest rates. They could replace older, higher interest debt with new, lower interest debt. But now the bonanza is ending. According to Bloomberg, as recently as 2012, companies were refinancing at interest rates that were 0.83 percentage points cheaper than the rates at which their debt they were replacing. JP Morgan analysts said that gap narrowed to 0.26% last year, even without a rise in interest rates, because the average coupon on newly issued debt increased. So the heirs to the old debt are becoming less and less fruitful and bountiful and progressive for the economy.
Well, what was the technology of the Romans that allowed them to expand their technology?
The straight roads.
The roads. They built these fabulous roads across their empire, which incidentally was the technology to...
And that road was the Appian Way. And the elders brought that out too. That's the Appian Way. It was like our highways and things that America has today. Okay? It just goes back into the Appian Way.
Early Christianity. And we have the technology of financial engineering that has reached its end game in a lot of ways. And the same roads that barbarians used to march into Rome and take it over are now being used by the financial terrorists, like the big four banks here in the UK, to corrupt the system using derivatives, the financial weapons of terrorism of our day, to unsettle the polis, the political forum, the democratic process, to engage in financial anarchy.
This is the book of Ecclesiastes 12 and verse 4 or verse 3. It says, "In the days when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease." What's that? That's the jobs, man. Okay? And if you look at, let me look at the word. Hold on, Salakia. It says, Grodum. Let me read that again. It says, "In the days when the keepers of the house shall tremble, and the strong men shall bow themselves, and the grinders cease, because they are few, and those that look out of the windows be darkened, and the doors shall be shut in the streets when the sound of the grinding is low, and that's the work. That's why you have all these businesses that are shutting down. And you even had the elders do a video about